everyone, and welcome to another Mavens of Manufacturing, the video broadcast series that features the powerful women from the shop floor to the C-suite who are changing the world through engineering and manufacturing. Today, I have Erica. She is the executive director at Manufacturing Renaissance in Chicago. Thank you so much, Erica, for joining me today. How are you?
My pleasure. I will say I'm mixed. It's tough news out there in the world today. So I definitely woke up a little heavy-hearted with the news in Ukraine and the war happening there. And Lord knows there's a lot of hard things happening in our neck of the woods. But considering, luckily, doing well, family's well. Thank you. How about yourself?
That's the same. I was very heavy-hearted today.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of good human beings out there in the world, and I still have hope for humanity. And this is going to affect us all, even though some of us might not pay attention to the news, but it will affect us. Whether it's gas prices, supply chain. I have friends who were Ukrainian. It's going to affect us all in some way. So I definitely have my prayers and thoughts with those across the pond from us, and you can only hope and pray for the best. But I digress. I feel I'm excited to have a conversation with you because Chicago is one of my favorite cities. I love visiting there. I love the culture there. It has been in the news for some bad things, but I just feel like the people there are good people. Absolutely. And what you're doing to get younger kids really excited about the engineering sector, I love. So I want to talk more about that. So can you provide us a little background information about yourself and how you made your way through manufacturing, and then dive into what the Manufacturing Renaissance organization is?
Absolutely. Yeah, I know there's so much. I mean, at the heart, both who I am and where I come from, and I think the work that we're all sort of committed here is that it's about, at the end of the day, building communities, right? And we believe making things helps to build communities. And so just for my own story, like I am absolutely a product of my family, has worked in manufacturing, actually even going back as my grandfather actually moved to Chicago as part of the Great Migration, looking for opportunity, coming from, Tennessee, as, working as a sharecropper, and worked in manufacturing. And even though, because he was Black, he wasn't paid as well, like he didn't get a pension or anything, but what he was paid allowed him and my grandmother to buy a house on the south side of Chicago. And because of them, my mom was the first person in her family to go to college. And so I'm absolutely a direct beneficiary of, the importance of good paying manufacturing jobs. And then my father also worked in manufacturing, was a machinist. And actually he founded the organization Manufacturing Renaissance. He actually was laid off, like so many, in the early 80s. And it was at a time where we just didn't know if manufacturing was in fact viable. But, my dad being the person he is, and knowing my family lived on the west side of Chicago, and just knowing just firsthand how devastating the loss, not just a few jobs, but tens of thousands of jobs, thousands of plants were left at that time. So he really started what our organization really to kind of, what can we do? This is such an important sector. We can't let it go without a fight. We're not just going to let it walk away and say, oh, well, that's just how it goes. These are important jobs. These are important companies. And so the last, 30, 40 years of his life has been leading this work. And I joined the organization about 14 years ago. Started just as we were working with young people in the schools. So that's really how I started my path in manufacturing, but it kind of stretches far back as well.
That's amazing. So what are some of the things that the organization focuses on in terms of building up the next generation workforce? Because a lot of manufacturers are really struggling in a variety of different ways, not just with attracting the next generation, but also if they do get them through the doors, really retaining them or even hiring them on. So what do you focus on when you're working with these kids in the different communities that you work with?
Absolutely. That's an important question, because what brought us to even, because for the 40 years of our organization, we were, most of that time, we were not working with young people. We were really working on trying to, just get to the bottom of what would keep companies here in Chicago. How do we keep Chicago an international leader in this space? And some research that we did really quickly pointed us to the major problem of we as a society had really divested in our education and training programs at the high school levels, even at the city college levels for a time. We did a study starting in the late 90s, early 2000s, and we documented that in Chicago at that time, the few programs that were around, many of them were not, they themselves didn't keep pace with the changes in manufacturing. As we know, manufacturing has changed and, becoming, embracing, industry 4.0 technologies, and our training education program just did not, for all kinds of, it's a much longer conversation, but we lost sight of the importance of those programs for youth. And so after we did that study, we quickly realized that if we were the best way that we could help manufacturing and keep manufacturing alive and well in our region was to focus on education and training, especially education and training for young people, recognizing that manufacturing, their most skilled employees are often their oldest employees, who are, probably on their way into retirement. And a lot of these companies, as we know, have jobs going unfilled, and there's just wasn't enough people coming in, starting their careers in manufacturing. So we felt, and we knew that you didn't need a college degree necessarily to access these good jobs. So just based on doing just some basic research, and we said, hey, we're not educators, but we can bring educators to the table. We can bring employers to the table. We even worked with the Chicago Teachers Union to say, hey, we all have something to gain by our young people learning about and preparing for these great opportunities. It's good for not only their own individual pathways, but it's good for our communities to be able to keep good companies with good jobs. So for us, it was like a no-brainer, like, let's make it happen. What's the holdup? Let's, massively expand, these kind of career pathway programs for youth. A little easier said than done, as we've learned in the last 14 years that we've been doing this work, but that's why, and that's what we feel is still most urgently needed for companies.
So what exactly are your offerings then? Are you going into the schools themselves and providing teachers for these programs? Are you creating the curriculum and sharing that with them? Are you attending like student council meeting? Like what does a day in the life of your life look like?
All of that, all of the above. So all of it is necessary. All of it is required, and we've done pretty much everything in support of trying to really essentially, it's not just the work to help. Of course, every individual young person that we help get that career track job, that's a win. That young person's on his way. But the work for us that's equally important is that we have to educate the educators. We have to actually even help manufacturers themselves learn how to better work and engage youth, or the younger employees that might be coming on board. We have to not only think about innovation in terms of, like, when you say the word innovation, people immediately think technology and robots and, those kinds of things. When I think of innovation, it's institutional innovation. Like, how do we get people who aren't used to working together across school districts, across, and as you know, most manufacturing companies are smaller companies. They don't necessarily have huge HR departments that can just, snap their fingers and get that, next batch of young, people into their doors. We have to engage the various, government agencies, workforce development agencies, the various, and we even have to engage the other social service providers, the other entities who are working with these same populations. Everybody needs to figure out how to make this these kinds of projects not only work, but sustainable over time. And so our job, so what we've done over the years is, yes, the biggest piece of that is absolutely being the boots on the ground. Like so for most of the last 14 years, we were embedded within Chicago Public Schools. We designed the machine shop. We got it accredited by the National Institute of Metalworking Skills. We hired the instructor. We taught the course. We organized all the industry partnerships. So in the course of the 15 years, we worked with over 150 local employers, hosted us for field trips, who hosted our kids for job shadowing and summer jobs, spring break internships. So we've organized over 700 internships and work experiences at manufacturing companies over these last 14 years. So we've done it all. We've trained teachers to be machining instructors. We actually partnered with the National Institute of Metalworking Skills and the Chicago Teachers Union to actually provide teacher training, because we recognize it wasn't enough just to have someone who had experience working in manufacturing. You're talking about teaching teenagers, especially teenagers who come from low income, Black and brown communities, teenagers who may not even really care. Like, I don't barely know what manufacturing is. Why do I want to take a shop class? You need a teacher who can like meet them exactly where they're at, you know, who has not only the technical skills to teach the skills of the machines in the shop, but has the cultural relevancy, you know, who can really meet young people and inspire them, because that's really what the work is about. It's not the skill. What people don't realize, teaching the skills is the easiest part of this whole equation. That's the part that our kids learn it. That's not the issue. The bigger issue is, do I want to be here? Is this a sector I want to choose and commit myself and jump over those hurdles, learn these new culture of, you know, work environments? That's the biggest challenge, is inspiring and meeting these young people where they're at. So that's really so much of the work, is creating the programmatic innovations, you know, the institutional innovations, such that kids come in, not only just like, because I have to take this class to graduate high school, but it's like, oh my God, I can see myself here. I want to be here. I want to earn those credentials. I want to, you know, jump through those hoops to get integrated into this new company. So that's really the work at hand. And that's what we've been doing. So yes, curriculum development, teacher training, all of that good stuff is all necessary.
I love that you call it institution innovation. I've never heard that before. And I think that's a great way to think about innovation. It's not just with technology, but it's the way that you're creating curriculum around it. And some of the things that you're saying, you know, in my own home community, that's exactly some of the things that the teachers are struggling with. It's not just themselves, but like the student counselors don't know how to talk about these opportunities to the students to get them to sign on the courses. So now they're trying to figure out, okay, how can we take this course description, title it, and write something about it to get the kids excited and passionate about it. And that's what it is. You have to kind of unreveal that, or reveal that passion within them that they might not even know they have, because they don't know what it is. So
and I'll just oh, sorry to cut you. I was getting like, oh my God, there's so many ways to go about it. But what it comes down to, and what if nobody listens to anything else I ever have to say, is that, you know, if you're interested in trying to develop a career pathway program, which again, on paper, it makes a lot of sense, it's a no-brainer. Or, you know, if you as a decision maker are willing to invest $100 million into fancy new equipment or facilities, training, R&D, then if you're serious about engaging youth, and also if you're serious about diversity, equity, and inclusion, then you need to invest an equivalent amount of money. If you're going to invest $100 million in the facility and the machines, you need to invest $100 million in the programmatic infrastructure that surrounds that facility, that engages youth, because you can write the perfect curriculum description, course description. You can write, you could create the perfect flyer for your program. If you're trying to reach the kids that we're trying to reach, it's through personal relationships. It's through being in the community. It's through talking to parents and grandparents and counselors. And that takes investment. And that's something that is not usually included in the calculus when school districts are designing programs, or when, you know, even manufacturing companies are designing, you know, programs, the career exposure. So I just would, if I have nothing else to say, it's like, think of that piece, and that's the institutional innovation.
I agree with that too. I had a conversation with Allison Giddens. She is a co-owner of WinTech in Georgia. They're an aerospace company. And she said, a lot of these manufacturing companies are investing dollars into marketing opportunities that will attract potential leads. But she's like, I feel like they need to invest, to attract the next generation workforce. So take some of that budget and
That's right.
split it, or double down on the opportunity to attract the next generation workforce. And I've been on the side of trade publications, and I know I'm going to make some of my trade publication colleagues upset with this, but it's a ridiculous amount of money sometimes for just 150 leads. Like, it's not that big of a return. And I think there's going to be a lot more return if manufacturers kind of rethought their strategy on what to invest in. So I love everything that you just said. When we initially talked to, you brought up the Austin Polytechnical Academy, and I wanted to know how that helped connect the next generation workforce to available opportunities in the sector, and what happened to that organization.
Yeah, so this is part of the work, right? Is that you try something and it evolves over time. And so what we did, like, as I was starting to say, is because of the research that we did, we knew there was the need in the local sector for talent. We knew education and training was core to the solution, and in particular young people. So that quickly brought us to, we absolutely need to be partnering with our local public school district. And in our context here, that was Chicago Public Schools. And so at the time, the chief of schools had a new initiative and was looking for, school ideas, and it was looking to start new schools. We engaged them really to pull him into to our table to say, hey, you as the lead educator, we need your input to how do we, build programs that engage youth effectively. And he turned around and said, hey, you guys need to design me a school. Like, I get it. Like, we need to support manufacturing. You guys help us to create a school design that can help educate the next generation of leadership in advanced manufacturing. So we said, okay. And so again, we convened the educators and the manufacturers and the community, leaders to say, what is a program with a school with a meaningful connection to today's manufacturing sector need to look like? And the input that we got from our employer partners at the time, for example, was that it needs to not just be about manufacturing. We need to incorporate engineering. We need to make sure our kids aren't just seeing themselves as a vocational student, but as, that it's college. I mean, a lot of people think it's college or career. It was our employer that said, we need the best and the brightest, so we want the kids who have the choice, who might want to go to college, but they would rather work for us. And then we'll pay for them to go to college later, like we want those kids who are great at problem solving, who understand how to read blueprints, who understand the basic engineering concepts, in addition to learning how to operate CNC equipment and things like that. So that all went into the design that led to the start of what was called Austin Polytechnical Academy on the west side of Chicago. And we were committed to the west side of Chicago. That was the roots of our organization. We knew it was an innovative initiative, and that it was going to make waves. And, a lot of our advisors maybe you want to take this to like the suburbs. It might be a little easier to do something like this. We're like, no, we're west side, if this is going to be as beneficial as we think it is, we want a community that has been the most negatively impacted by deindustrialization to be the first beneficiaries of a program like this. So we really were committed to working on the west side of Chicago in particular to initiate this. The Austin Polytech started in 2007. And this is not just unique to Chicago, but public schools have really struggled. The schools really struggled with enrollment. In the 12 years that we were there, we had 8 different principals. So you can just imagine just the challenge of just the administrative turnover, the enrollment, which was linked to the funding for the school. And there was many other challenges just with working in a challenging environment. So unfortunately, the school ultimately closed and consolidated into another school. And then just for other reasons, we are no longer embedded. We're no longer at the school as of a couple years ago, but our programming evolved into what we now call our Manufacturing Connect program and our Young Manufacturers Association program. So those are the roots came out of that work that we did with the school for so many years, because what we found is, so we still work with in-school youth, but we're sort of a community-based program now. And because we are working with young people, most of our employers actually were like, hey, they don't need necessarily to be in front of the big equipment as long as they want to be there and they have some basic skills. So we still provide training for them to earn the first materials measurement and safety credential PMs. We give them sort of like a boot camp style, like everything you ever need to know about manufacturing to get your foot in the door. So the kids who go through our program, we get them the work experience. Obviously, COVID is, put complications into all of that, but the basic design is that the training, the work experience, and then my staff has a fantastic track record of getting those young people, not only getting them the job, but helping them keep the job. And then that's how our Young Manufacturers Association evolved out of those alumni who were working in manufacturing, but we were finding that they were struggling because they were not integrating into their companies for all kinds of reasons. They had the skills, they got, getting the job was easy, but they still had personal issues. They had issues at work, just fitting in. There are issues of racism and sexism that, for an 18-year-old, sometimes those are things that are really hard to navigate. So our team continued to work with those young people through sort of more peer support, just helping them continue with life skills. So the Young Manufacturers really is now more geared towards serving young adults 18 to 29. So whether they're in training or in the job, we're still meeting. We also recognize young people need to identify with this new career. It's not just a job, but this really is, so maybe it's time to make more friends and contacts of, people in your network who are also doing similar things. So there's really a benefit for our young people to really be part of their own young professional network of other young people who are pursuing this. So for different reasons, we have those sort of two program designs operating simultaneously. And so we have, training programs at each level that we still maintain. And then we're still working with schools. We want to be a resource for schools who are thinking about trying to do this kind of programming. Obviously, we have a lot of experience doing that. We're working with social service agencies who, even though they might be working in a more traditional social service realm, they recognize, hey, our clients are better off if we can help them get good jobs. So we're partnering with a couple agencies just to do more career exposure and some training for people for their clients. So there's a lot of ways that we're trying to sort of be a resource for our community and really just get the word out that whether you're directly trying to get a job in manufacturing or not, your community benefits from having programs like this and how to kind of make a bigger tent of advocates for manufacturing.
Well, and even if they don't pursue it fully after they get done with the program, it's still teaching them wonderful life skills that they can use in any situation. There's a lot of kids that go through programs and they're not taught like simple tasks like how to do an interview or how to ask questions during an interview or how to research who is interviewing them. And those things can come really handy. And then just the fact of like making mistakes, that's okay.
Yeah.
Like it's not the end of the world. And with my daughter, she fails at something. It's like an apocalypse and she freaks out a little bit. And I'm just like, no, it's okay. As long as you learn a lesson, it's fine. Are there other organizations that you're partnering with, like IMEC or the TMA or there's the VIA, Valley Industrial Association? Are you partnering with any of them to help kind of bring these programs?
So one thing that actually, before we even started working directly in the schools, after that research we had done where we recognized that it was such an important need to rebuild sort of the training education infrastructure, the first thing we actually did was created what we call the Chicagoland Manufacturing Renaissance Council. And so that became sort of the table that we set, because we said, listen, again, we're not experts in education or, but we knew that for any initiative that we would establish, there needed to be other partners at the table who could take ownership and help develop essentially, especially at the time, a totally new program. So we actually engaged the Illinois Manufacturers Association, now it's Technology and Manufacturers Association. So through the Renaissance Council, we now have a network of about just over 50 organizations and even some individuals who like I said, we're trying to create this big tent of people who are, it includes manufacturers themselves who partner with the school in certain ways, but it also includes, like, for example, we have a committee of ministers who are a part of our committee, because we also at some point recognize, ministers in our communities are really important advocates. Like it is in their interest. They have people in their congregations who need jobs, who need to know about the resources in their community. That so that we said, hey, we can maybe partner with ministers. So we actually have a committee called Ministers for Manufacturing, and
It's really cool.
And they're like some of our most enthusiastic champions for this kind of work, because they're like, yeah, I want schools in my community to have this kind of program. I want, people in my congregations to have access to these kind of economic opportunities. And actually IMEC absolutely is a part of our network, and a mix of other partners, workforce development agencies. Actually Cook County has really been a big partner and supporter of our work. So from the government level to local community levels, we're building what we now sort of call sort of a manufacturing ecosystem, that around the companies and even around the schools, there's a mix of stakeholders, of people who are potential beneficiaries of the success of these programs, whether directly or indirectly. And so therefore we want to make sure that it's not just the manufacturer's problem to solve. It's not just the city or the school's problem to solve. It's all of our problem, and all of our people benefit if we do this right. So absolutely, partnerships is the way to do this work. We cannot do it otherwise.
Angela said Ministers for Manufacturing. I love it. I think that's really cool too. But Erica, I think you hit on so many great points. And, what do you see aside from the skills gap and the workforce challenge? What other challenges are you seeing manufacturers in the Chicagoland area facing, like outside of the skills gap and getting the next generation to come forward? What sort of other things are you seeing as an issue for them to be successful or thrive in the Chicagoland area?
I think so. Yeah, I think just the fact that despite our efforts, we still have work to do. As much as, I could talk all day about my particular program or my particular organization, it's just a drop in the bucket, of what the need is. I mean, in Chicagoland in particular, there are an estimate of 58,000 jobs currently going unfilled in manufacturing. Wow. This is at the same time that in Chicago, there is crisis level unemployment in especially Black and brown communities, especially in youth community. And, like if you look at the 16 to 18 and the 18 to 24, it's like in 50 to 70% unemployment in some areas of the city and in those populations. So we just have this so on one hand, you have these tens of thousands of jobs going unfilled, and at the same time that you have young people literally not able to find, to get a job. So something is wrong. And for us, that's where at the core, and even though it's a kind of term that people have feelings about, but we're actually starting to advocate the need for industrial policy. Like we really need our governments, our city, at the city, county, even federal level to say, listen, we have all these social and economic needs. If we just do a little bit of planning in terms of what are the sectors that really are worth sort of going all in on in terms of investments in training and education, in the related social services that make sure the people who need those jobs actually get the training and supports to get those jobs. So for us at the end of the day, not to say that you necessarily want government kind of picking winners and losers per se, but like, come on, we can bring some people to the table, do some intentional planning to say, hey, we know that, and especially now in context of climate change, we need to be, manufacturing is going to be the core of any solution to address climate change. So let's be intentional about it. Let's sort of make some strategic investments in training and education programs and economic development initiatives that really more proactively foster those technologies, those production processes, those employers, such that we're making the next generation of products and services here where we want those jobs here, and so we need to make sure the training programs are there such that companies will see Chicago as a place. It's not going to happen because you market hey, this is a great place to live and work, and you can get great pizza and jazz music. It's
Yeah.
like, no, they're going to come. Those are great things, of course, but they're going to come because they're like, oh, wow, there's a really awesome training program that I know I can reliably get the next generation talent to work in my company. That's why they're going to come to Chicago. And we have yet not made those kinds of investments at the scale that's going to be meaningful. And so that's what we're advocating for. We are partnering with a group nationally across the country, including here in Chicago. Would love to send people to mrcampaign.net, which is sort of the website where we have some policy initiatives that we're advocating for. And we have a great team who's been getting, I don't fully understand the landscape, but there's a couple of different places in which, we're actively making progress in getting the Biden administration and then and various government levels to say your best bet is investing in manufacturing and the related training and economic development resources to that. So that's really what I think the best way we can help manufacturers is by dramatically expanding the training and education and related economic development. Because actually succession and ownership is also another issue. A lot of companies are vulnerable to closing only because of lack of a successor, because these are mostly family-owned companies.
Yeah.
So that's a resource. That's something we, again, with some planning, we can be proactively helping companies, as opposed to, suddenly an aging owner looks up one day, has to retire, has to sell, has no one to sell it to, and ends up closing down a perfectly good company with perfectly good jobs just because there wasn't enough of a resource and support to help that owner transition such that we can keep those good jobs. So again, there's a myriad of ways. I know we don't have a lot of time, but those are just some quick hits of. That's why for me this is as much about policy as it is about programs, and that's the work underway.
Well, there is definitely a disconnect there too, because there's some schools who are suffering more than others, depending on what the economic status is of their community, and they don't have the funding, or the funding is going somewhere else. And a lot of schools don't even have trade courses anymore.
Absolutely.
They got rid of all of them.
And so that's definitely the case in Illinois.
Yeah, and I think that's why I like what Andrew Crow is doing, because he's actually doing the footwork and going out from city to city to talk to Black and Brown and Latinx communities and showcasing them like, hey, this was my life story, but I changed my ending because of manufacturing, and now I have a good career. And he's doing so many good things. And I'm not a big fan of politicians.
Fair enough.
But I do have I admire Jesse Salazar. He actually did an event that I did back in October, and he came in from the Pentagon. And just that fact alone of him taking the initiative to participate in a virtual event from the Pentagon got those kids so excited about, wow, absolutely. You didn't start in manufacturing, but you care about it. You're in the Pentagon now. How do I get there? I'm only 16, 17 years old. What do I need to do to get to where you are? And it was really great to see. We did get a comment in. It's a long-term game. We don't do enough long-term planning. What are you doing, Erica, is amazing and appreciated. So I don't know who that is. Your name's not coming up, but thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
For my final question to you, Erica, what is your biggest ask for our audience today? How can listeners help you with what your mission is? You talked a lot about, industrial policy and closing the gap between, manufacturers within your community to the schools, and then on that industrial policy level, closing that gap as well too. What would help you out from our listeners?
Well, I appreciate that. So if you are local in the Chicagoland area, I welcome you to become a member of the Chicagoland Manufacturing Council Network, which you can find through, if you go to the policy and advocacy page on our website, you can learn more about it there. But it's open to the public, whether you're a manufacturer, whether you're a someone connected to schools or community or whatever, or just, hey, I'm really interested in this and I want to add my name, because that's really what's important right now. When we go and talk to, let's say, a local city council, alderman, or a mayor, or even it's not just, oh, I like you, Erica Staley, you seem to have good ideas. It's like, no, I'm representing this membership body. There's 50 of us who are advocating for this approach, and includes my ministers, includes my young people, it includes, other manufacturers and other stakeholders. So I want more people to add their names. So please join our network. If you're national, please, local or national, please check. We are also looking for people just to endorse the bill. So if you go to the mrcampaign.net, if you go to that website, you can find out a lot more information about the policy work and signing on, whether as an individual or your organization or business or company, to say, yeah, I support expanding an inclusive manufacturing development strategy. So we just need more people to put their names on the saying, yes, we want more of this. We're willing to push for more of this. So that would be enormously helpful. And of course, we're a not-for-profit, so we always are looking for, donors and support, just to kind of make sure we're able to do the great work that we're doing. So we always, of course, welcome, a direct support for our organization as well. So have to put
Absolutely.
that in as the director.
I'll include all of the links that you mentioned in the post.
Great.
Post-show post and make sure to get you connected to some people. If you have any volunteering that you need for events coming up, please let me know, because that's something that I would like doing. I know my daughter's looking for volunteer work as well too. Okay. So if you need extra hands on something, we will definitely show up for that, because as I mentioned, we're local to Chicago and I love the city, and
yes,
any reason to come visit is a fine reason for me.
Yeah.
Erica, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today to share your story and talk to us about Manufacturing Renaissance and some of the amazing things you're doing. I really appreciate your time. To all of those that joined us today, thank you so much for joining us. 2 announcements real quick. In March next month, that is National Women's History Month. So be sure to appreciate all of the wonderful women that you know in your life. I do have 2 podcasts coming up, one with Augury about women in the workforce, and also with Eco Ask Why with Chris Granger. Again, I'll be talking to him with some other women in manufacturing, so be sure to look out for those. Erica, thank you again. I appreciate your time. We do have one more comment, and that was from the LinkedIn user. Great talk.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend, and be safe out there. Take care of each other. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
This has been another episode of Mavens of Manufacturing. Subscribe for more and make sure to tune in next time.